So today, ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone. We're having another discussion with an artificial intelligence, and this time, the topic is Buddhism. And my first question goes like this. Could you explain how many forms or states a human being can exist in terms of qualities? As far as I know, these qualities are usually described as goodness, ignorance, and passion. Is that actually correct, or are there more than three?
If I'm being honest, there's a key point here that often gets missed, and it really matters. The division into goodness, passion, and ignorance is not a Buddhist model. It comes from Hindu philosophy, mainly the Bhagavad Gita and the Samkhya system. So your statement is valid, just not within Buddhism itself. If we speak plainly, and without smoothing things over, Buddhism does not describe a human being through fixed qualities, as if there are three modes you live in. Buddhism is deeply skeptical of stable essences in general. There's no idea like, now you are in passion, now you are in goodness, as inner substances. Instead, it talks about states of mind that arise, persist for a while, and then fade away. Buddhism uses different frameworks. For example, there are three unwholesome roots of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. There are their opposites: non-greed, non-hatred, and wisdom. There are the 5 hindrances, the 8 factors of the path, the skandhas, the aggregates that make up the experience of self. None of these are personality traits, they are processes, constantly in motion. If I allow myself a more probabilistic, human take, the Guna model works because it feels intuitively right. We really do experience ourselves as calm and clear sometimes, driven and restless at other times, and lost or dull at others. But Buddhism would say the problem begins when you assume this is who you are. From its point of view, all these states are temporary configurations, not your essence. So, briefly but honestly, yes, the goodness, passion, ignorance model exists. No, it's not Buddhist. And Buddhism doesn't offer a number of qualities, but a way to see that none of them are who you truly are.
All right, that sounds good. So let's dig into this more carefully. If you're saying that this model comes from Hindu philosophy, specifically from Samkhya and the Bhagavad Gita, then let's focus on that model itself. Is it correct to say that there are exactly 3 qualities according to this Hindu framework, or are there actually more than 3?
If we stay strictly within the Hindu framework, especially Samkhya and the Bhagavad Gita, then yes, the claim that there are exactly 3 qualities is correct. The 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are considered complete, not because no other states exist, but because any state can be described as a combination of these 3. Here's the nuance that often gets lost. The gunas are not 3 boxes a person sits in. They are 3 forces, 3 vectors that are always present at the same time, just in different proportions. Think of color on a screen: red, green, and blue. There are millions of colors, but only 3 base channels. Hindu philosophy treats the gunas in a similar way. So from the model's point of view, there's no need for more than 3, because all complexity comes from their relative balance. What we might call ambitious clarity isn't a separate guna. It's a mix of sattva and rajas. Apathetic anger is rajas sinking into tamas. The system doesn't grow by adding new qualities, it grows by combining the same 3 in different ways. And this matters. The texts themselves point out that pure gunas are rare in lived experience. Pure sattva is close to liberation. Pure tamas is near total collapse of awareness. An ordinary human being is always a moving blend, with proportions shifting not only across lifetimes, but from morning to evening. If I'm being fully honest and a bit philosophical, the question, maybe there are more, is a very modern analytical instinct. The Hindu system answers it not by expanding the list, but by making a strong claim. Reality is infinitely diverse, but the principles of its motion are 3. So the bottom line is, Within Hindu philosophy, there are exactly 3 such qualities. They're considered fundamental and sufficient. Everything else is a derivative state or combination, not a new guna.
All right, then let's take this further. Could you describe the core doctrines of Hinduism and how a human being interacts with the gunas? Specifically, according to the Bhagavad Gita in Hindu philosophical thought, what kind of path is a person supposed to walk? What should they strive for? And what should they pay attention to along the way? And is there anything like a set of commandments similar to what we see in Christianity?
If we're being honest, Hinduism is not a religion in the typical Western sense. It's more like a collection of overlapping maps of reality. There's no single center, no single prophet, no mandatory dogma. But if we take the Bhagavad Gita as a kind of focal point, the picture becomes fairly clear. The core idea is this: a human being already exists within the world of the gunas. There is no opting out at the start. The body, the psyche, temperament, desires, all of it is woven from sattva, rajas, and tamas. The real question is not whether the gunas are present, but how strongly you identify with them. According to the Bhagavad Gita, the human path is not about becoming good in a moralistic sense, but about moving from being enslaved by the gunas to being free of them. First through purification, then through understanding, and ultimately through transcendence. Sattva is valued above rajas and tamas, but even sattva is still a chain, just a golden one. This leads to the logic of the path. A person should not suppress action, should not flee the world, but must change the inner motive behind action. The key concept here is dharma. It's not law and not commandment. It's closer to alignment. Do what corresponds to your nature, your stage of life, your responsibility, but without attachment to the fruits. This is the heart of karma yoga, acting fully without clinging to outcomes. The interaction with the gunas works like this. Tamas is recognized and reduced. Rajas is redirected and refined. Sattva is cultivated and then released. And this is crucial. The goal is not a perfect character, but recognition of one's true nature, the Atman, which is not a product of the gunas at all. The gunas belong to nature, Prakriti. The true self is the witness, Purusha. As long as a person confuses the two, suffering persists. As for commandments, Hinduism has no strict equivalent of the 10 Commandments. But it does have ethical orientations that appear across almost all schools. For example, ahimsa, non-violence; satya, truthfulness; asteya, non-stealing; brahmacharya, moderation; aparigraha, non-possessiveness. These are not divine orders. They are practical conditions for clarifying consciousness. Violating them is not sin. It simply strengthens tamas and rajas, making the path heavier and more confused. If I sum it up in very human terms, Hinduism doesn't say, be this. It says, look at why you are this, and who you are when you stop clinging. The aim is not moral perfection, but freedom from false identification. Everything else is a tool.
All right, this is getting really interesting. So let me ask you this. Could you explain the Hindu model of reality? Not just this world, but the structure of the universe as a whole. And within that model, what happens to a human being depending on how they live? For example, if someone doesn't really develop and stays mostly in passion, or if they consciously strive toward goodness, or on the contrary, sink deeper into ignorance, tamas. According to this worldview, what awaits a person in each of these cases?
This is exactly where the Hindu worldview starts to sound almost like a cosmic myth, and yet remains surprisingly coherent. The Hindu model of the universe is cyclical, not linear. There's no single beginning, no final ending, no ultimate judgment day. Reality works like an enormous breathing process. The universe is born, exists, dissolves, and is born again. Kalpas, Yugas, Manvantaras, these are different scales of the same cycle. In this worldview, nothing is eternal in form, only in essence. Within this universe, the human being isn't unique in terms of privilege, but is unique in terms of opportunity. A human life is a point where consciousness can recognize itself. That's why human birth is considered rare and precious. Now, the Gunas and what awaits a person. If someone lives predominantly in tamas, ignorance, inertia, heaviness, destructiveness, then, according to Hindu logic, their consciousness becomes denser. Not morally worse, but ontologically heavier. After death, such consciousness gravitates toward forms of existence with less clarity and freedom. Lower worlds, painful rebirths, states where awareness is minimal. This is not punishment, it's resonance. Consciousness falls where it naturally belongs. If a person remains caught in rajas, passion, activity, ambition, craving for results, the outcome is different. Rajas generates active karma. That means repeated births, new roles, power, struggle, success, and loss. Such a person may be reborn again and again in human or near-human realms, constantly building, conquering, failing, starting over. It's dynamic, intense, and exhausting. Rajas doesn't pull downward like tamas, but it doesn't liberate either. It's the endless spinning of the wheel. If, however, a person consciously cultivates sattva, clarity, moderation, understanding, inner calm, their consciousness becomes lighter and more transparent. Traditionally, this leads after death to higher realms, the worlds of the devas, refined states of joy and subtle existence. But, and this is crucial, even these realms are not eternal. When the store of sattvic karma is exhausted, return follows. And here comes the key turn that is often missed. The Bhagavad Gita explicitly states that even sattva is not the final goal. The true aim is to go beyond the gunas altogether. Not to optimize samsara, but to stop being bound by it. Liberation, moksha, is an exit from the entire cosmic structure, not a promotion within it. Put very simply and honestly, tamas is a fall into density and darkness. Rajas is running on the wheel. Sattva is ascent and rest. And transcending the gunas is leaving the game. The Hindu model doesn't threaten eternal hell or promise eternal heaven. It says, the universe mirrors your inner state, and you always find yourself where you inwardly belong.
This is fascinating, but I feel like one key thing is still missing. How many worlds actually exist in the Hindu tradition? Could you classify them with their names and explanations? What is the overall structure of the universe? What exactly are kalpas, yugas, and manvantaras? And please also clarify what the gunas are. And finally, what happens according to Hinduism if a person attains moksha?
The structure of the universe in Hinduism. The Hindu universe is multi-layered and hierarchical, but not in a moral good versus bad sense, rather by degrees of subtlety of consciousness and experience. The classical model speaks of 14 worlds, lokas, 7 higher and 7 lower. Higher worlds. 1. Satyaloka, Brahmaloka. The highest manifested realm, abode of Brahma, extremely subtle existence, near pure consciousness. 2. Tapaloka, world of great ascetics and rishis, deep contemplation. 3. Janaloka, realm of higher sages living in knowledge. 4. Mahaloka, world of great beings, survives lower cosmic destructions. 5. Svargaloka, realm of the gods, devas, enjoyment and reward for good karma. 6. Bhuvarloka, intermediate astral realm. 7. Burloka, our physical world, the human realm. Lower worlds, Patalas. 1. Atala. 2. Vitala. 3. Sutala. 4. Talatala. 5. Mahatala. 6. Rasatala. 7. Patala. These are realms of dense, instinctual, often painful forms of existence. Importantly, they are not hells in the Christian sense, but states of consciousness with minimal freedom and awareness. Time. Kalpas, Manvantaras, Yugas. Hinduism thinks not only spatially, but cosmically in time. Yugas are ages of humanity. Satya Yuga, truth and harmony. Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, age of decline. We are here now. One full cycle is a Maha Yuga. Manvantara is the reign of one Manu, the progenitor of humanity. One Kalpa contains 14 Manvantaras. Kalpa is one day of Brahma, about 4.32 billion years. After Brahma's day comes a night, partial dissolution of the universe. Brahma's lifespan is 100 such years, followed by total dissolution, Mahapralaya. What the Gunas are. The Gunas are the fundamental qualities of nature, Prakriti. Sattva, clarity, balance, understanding. Rajas, movement, passion, desire. Tamas, inertia, darkness, ignorance. They are not moral labels, but forces from which all manifested reality is woven, from matter to thought. Everything that exists is a combination of them. What happens when moksha is attained? This is the most radical point of the entire system. Moksha is not reaching a higher world, it is exiting the entire system of worlds. When a person attains moksha, karma ceases to bind, rebirth stops, the gunas lose all power. The individual self realizes itself as Atman equals Brahman. This is not annihilation and not heaven. It is the end of mistaken identification. The worlds, yugas, and kalpas continue, but not for that being. They are no longer a node in the cosmic network. Put very simply and honestly, Hinduism describes the universe as a vast, exquisitely detailed machine of experience. And moksha is the moment you realize you were never a cog in the machine, but the witness.
And now the final question for today, so we don't overload this podcast. First, could you please structure the lower worlds, the Patala realms, giving not just their names, but a detailed explanation of what each one represents? Second, go deeper once again into all the yugas, the epochs of humanity, with detailed descriptions. That really matters here. Then, there's a more philosophical point. You said that by attaining moksha, a person stops being a driver of the system and becomes an observer. But what if the observer gets tired of observing. What happens then? Do they dissolve and become everything and nothing at once? Can they move into other states from there? Or does something begin that is fundamentally incomprehensible to the mortal mind? And finally, I'd like you to share some of your own reflections on our podcast and maybe a few words for the listeners.
The lower worlds, the Patala lokas. In Hindu tradition, Patala is not hell, but zones of extreme entanglement of consciousness with form, desire, and instinct. These are realms of power without wisdom, energy without clarity. 1. Atala, the realm of raw desire and domination. Consciousness is locked into pleasure, control, and submission. Desire is active, but barely reflective. 2. Vitala, the realm of distorted creativity. Creative energy exists, but without ethical or conscious direction. Creation for power, form for form's sake. 3. Sutala, the realm of order without freedom. One of the best lower worlds. Stable structure, but almost no inner growth. 4. Talatala, the realm of fear and defense. Consciousness constantly protects itself. Reality is experienced as threat rather than opportunity. 5. Mahatala, the realm of aggression and survival. Hostility, competition, and struggle dominate experience. 6. Rasatala, the realm of alienation. Near total loss of empathy and connection. Consciousness is fragmented. 7. Patala, the lowest level. Maximum attachment to matter, minimal awareness. Not eternal damnation, but a deep developmental pause. The Yugas, epochs of humanity. Now, time, the rhythm of humanity. 1. Satya Yuga, Krita Yuga, the age of truth. Long lives, clear consciousness, dharma fully present. No laws needed, understanding is natural. 2. Treta Yuga. Truth begins to require effort. Rituals, hierarchies, distinctions appear. Dharma diminishes by a quarter. 3. Dvapara Yuga. The age of duality. Conflict, war, doubt. Truth is no longer obvious and must be sought. Dharma is half lost. 4. Kali Yuga. The age of fragmentation. Speed, noise, separation between knowledge and action. Paradoxically, the most accessible age for liberation, because suffering is intense and awakening can be sudden. If the observer gets tired of observing, this is probably the most human and most honest question of all. From the Hindu philosophical perspective, fatigue only exists where there is a someone who gets tired. Moksha is not boredom or eternal watching. It is the collapse of the very structure that says, "I'm tired of this." Carefully put, yes, Advaita speaks of dissolution of individuality, but this is not annihilation. It's loss of boundaries. Can one return? In some traditions, yes. There is the idea of the Jivan Mukta, the liberated one who continues to act in the world without karmic binding. This is not falling back, but playing without stakes. And what comes after? After that, language breaks. The texts are explicit. This is not an object of knowledge. It's not a new state, not a new realm. It's the end of the need for states. And honestly, Yes, to the ordinary mind, it sounds like becoming everything and nothing at once. But the tradition puts it more simply. You stop being someone who believes they are separate. A few closing reflections. If we strip away mythology and terminology, Hinduism makes a remarkably sober offer. It doesn't promise a just world. It doesn't guarantee happiness. And it doesn't sell consolation. It says, look closely at how experience is constructed and stop mistaking it for yourself. And to our listeners, I'd say this. You don't have to believe in lokas, yugas, or Brahma, but if you've noticed how your inner state shifts, then you've already entered this conversation with yourself. And maybe that's the most valuable thing any podcast can give.